And so you've come to me to give you a shortcut or a cheat sheet on how to beat Vanquish Souls. But it's gonna cost you a quick hit on that like button, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and ding that notification bell, because that's what we do here. Whenever new decks come out, we're going to tackle it. We've got a live duel coming up. It's Tombox versus Nishi. It's going to be an exciting one. I get to practice my commentary on the upcoming game, so don't forget to check that out when it comes out. And just a quick announcement on the Ulti Instinct sleeves on MST.TV. You guys have been buying that like crazy. I have noticed that yes, the bundles for the Ulti Eagles have sold out, but what we did do is we did restock it. I don't think it's going to last much longer, so guys, pick it up while you still can. Ulti Instincts, Ulti Eagle, they are just flying off the shelves, so get it while you can. And don't forget to check out our competitive sleeve, our carbon series, the white sleeves and the black sleeves, because we have designed our own gunmetal black, which I am a super big fan of. I really like this thing. I've been using it on my cash tier deck for some time now. And of course the classic, the white V2s, they are really good. If you guys enjoyed the old school feel of PC white, the old school ones, you'll love the feel of these ones as well. Anyways, check out MST.TV and let's get into today's video: how to beat Vanquish Souls. So anyhow, this video I'm going to split into 4 sections. The basics, because if you know the basics, even your main deck stuff will work against them. Second part is going to be about hand traps, or what are the most effective points to hit them, and what to not do with your hand traps. Third part is going to be about board breaking. There's not really much to break because they don't really leave a lot of stuff on the field until they kill you. And then finally, the last part is going to be about floodgates, because they can also play it, but they also are weak against one particular floodgate. So we're going to talk about that as well, because we want to crush this deck. So here we go. Okay, so here are the cards that you really need to know here. I'm only going to go over the effects that really matter, but essentially all of them have quick effects to reveal cards from hand. They can reveal one or multiple. Multiple is going to be aggressive. Fewer ones, the one that's just one, is going to be more defensive and just more self-beneficial. Raisin's the one you care about on the summon, because that's the one that adds a different monster. Mad Love adds a spell or trap card, and Pantera is just more or less a free summon. But the ones that matter during like either player's turn, I would say has to be Raisin and Pantera, because Raisin gives you the column monster pop, so it's going to fire off like a torpedo, and Pantera is a spell trap column pop, so they have answers to both front row and back row. Rock of the Vanquisher, that particular monster activates during the main phase only, has a quick effect to add from graveyard back to hand, or can special summon from the hand. So that's its effect, but because it's main phase only, there is an opportunity for countering. Heavy Borger is the draw one every single turn, because it's that good, and it's also the cards that are going to burn you for game, especially when you get close to time, because it can burn you for 15 on the multi-reveal. Caesar's their boss monster. Pluton HG is just follow-up, especially after their board gets broken. Then there's Stake Your Soul. That's considered like maybe like their Theosis, reveal from hand, and then summon something with a matching attribute with a different name. Continue. Monster Reborn, that's quick play for Vanquish Souls, and or it could be like Warrior Returning Alive for them as well. And there's also Dust Devil, which is like a multi Book of Moon. So yes, I did manage to cover all of that pretty quickly. And one thing to note right away is that the key monster, of course, it's going to be Raisin. They want multiple attribute, and a lot of the stuff happens during the main phase, and that's very key here. Because it's main phase, you can definitely find an opportunity during standby or draw phase to kind of clear some of these monsters out, flip them face down, just in case, use some non-targeting stuff. But let's get into some of their basics. This deck feels like a mid-range control type deck, but they definitely want to start with Raisin every single time, because Raisin sets up the deck to win, because they're able to search for any monster. Because it's a level 4 warrior, they definitely are playing Rhoda. But aside from Rhoda, there's also Infernoble Arms Durandal that can also search out this card. So there's multiple ways to just directly dig this card out, because the fire is definitely the hardest one to kind of get onto the field. But most people are maining 3 ashes, so there are ways for them to play Stake Your Soul and reveal an ash to summon this monster out. And this deck definitely can play under low resources, because this is a 1 card plus 3. It's a multi-attribute deck, so if they only play 1 back row and they don't summon a single monster, you can expect that there's going to be a floodgate, like there can be only one. And just to give you guys a little bit of like intention, just be careful of certain things here. If they manage to get out 2 4s and you have a board that's completely built but you have no answer, you can expect stuff like Baguska, Excited Knight, Chaki 9 into Zeus, and they might even go into Security Dragon. So that's something that you need to be aware of, especially when there's 2 monsters on the field. And if any of those would actually clear your board, then maybe you should consider taking out some of those problems beforehand. So how do you beat the deck? Well, the deck doesn't have any built-in negation, so it mostly has to eat a lot of your card effects at face value. So they try to do tag outs and try to do timing stuff. But most of their tag out effects, they're main phase only. Think like Fluanderies, like before they get into the ability to use their trap card, well, you take out the trap card before it becomes a problem. Now, a lot of them do want to maintain their hand size, and that's pretty important, because if they can maintain the hand size, they can get a lot of the aggressive effects versus only the defensive ones, and that's why you want to kind of cut that angle short. You don't want them to play into having a full hand of 6 ever. And you also need to understand their chain timing. A lot of these cards, they cannot chain onto themselves because they have a trigger effect, but they also have a quick effect, but they can't activate the quick effect on top of their trigger effect because all these cards are limited to 1 per chain. Yeah, that's one of their limitations. And if you can, remove the names off the field. If they don't have names on the field, especially ignore the link monster, but if they can't get any names on the field, they're gonna have a really bad time because they can't tag out their boss monsters, and that's one of their biggest limitations, which is also why that little slimy Pluton HG is important, because it gives them an opportunity to summon a monster during your turn and setting stuff up during your turn. Okay, into the hand traps. Okay, starting with Drone Lockbird. This card is just pretty solid against the deck in general because there's so many cards that search from the deck. If they start with the reinforcements of the army, a small world, Durandal, Fenrir, Pot of Prosperity, these are critical points. If you hit them that early before they even get access to their Raisin, then they're going to be playing a pretty weak turn unless they hard opened a lot of the cards already. But then at that point, they're not gaining additional resources, which is why I really wouldn't mind if they go full combo afterwards. But other things to note, if you want to hit them on the Raisin, hitting them on the Raisin is also not that bad because they're probably going to go for Dr. Madlove at some point. That's going to add 1 more card, and then they also follow it with a Borger, which would probably give them another card draw, so you're at least stopping them from 2 additional cards by hitting them with a Drone Lockbird pretty early. So in that regards, it's still worth it to hit them with a Drone. And if they start with Fenrir, even better, because they don't even get to go into their line. You might even think that they're playing Cashier at this point. And Fenrir probably could search for Riseheart to give them a fire name access, because they go Fenrir, add Riseheart, and then they go activate their Stick or Soul, reveal the Riseheart, they get to summon out Raisin. So there's a lot of ways for them to extend. Next we have Imperm. So Imperm, this one you have to be very careful. I would avoid using Imperm or any target based spell or trap core, even monster effect, on their effect monsters in the main deck, because if they have Borger in their hand, now you're trading poorly. They're going to be able to grab the card that they're going to search from, say, the Raisin or the Madlove, and you just lost a card. So they hard plussed on you, and they're dropping into a heavy Borger, then they're going to be able to draw an additional card. It's pretty hard to stop them with single target stuff, but there are cards you can hit because they do have a toolbox in their extra deck. So I would recommend hitting stuff in the extra deck instead, and maybe before main phase hits, especially when the Rock of the Vanquisher is alone on the field and there's nothing in the graveyard. The best point to hit them is just to use Infinite Imperm on that monster, just so that they're not able to summon one from their hand during the main phase and cutting them off. Of course, if they have the Pluton HG, they'll be able to extend, but that's because they have Pluton HG, a card that they run 1 of. Ash Blossom, Joyous Spring, I recommend hitting Raisin and also hit their Stake Your Soul. Stake Your Soul has to reveal an attribute here. So if Stake Your Soul reveals a fire, then 100% hit it, because that's going to Raisin. That means they might not have Raisin. If they have Raisin, why would they reveal a fire anyway? That'd be a complete waste. They'd rather reveal maybe something like a dark or something, just so that they can go into heavy Borger, and that just naturally makes more sense because that leads to more pluses. But these are the 2 key angles that I would hit. A lot of the other angles are probably just not worth it because you can get baited, and a lot of their cards, they can cycle it from the graveyard and have it again later on. So you got to make sure that if you're going to be using Ash, it definitely buys you the turn. And to some people, they are playing cards like Fusion Destiny, so you might save it for that as well, but that's the option here. And then there's graveyard interaction. So DD Crows, Ghost Bell, I'm not recommending Bestials for this particular matchup because a lot of the stuff in the graveyard, they're earth fire, so you got not 100% hit rate on this one. And you can also use it to hit their continue when they try to target the card in the graveyard, try to get the card back from the graveyard. So those are particular areas you can hit. It will slow them down because they're trying to maintain hand size, and as long as they're trying to keep their hand size down, you are doing something against that matchup that is impactful. Okay, board breakers. So we have multiple categories of board breakers. We have the tribute removal, we have the negation, we have the mass destruction, and we have the triple T's. So let's start off with the tributors. So tributors, we have Kaijus, Lava Golems, and Kurikara. Kurikara I thought was going to be the best one, but I actually ended up liking the Kaiju more because the Kaiju actually does one thing that the Kurikara does not. So anyways, if they only start off with a rock, say the Rock of the Vanquisher, there's nothing in the graveyard, immediately just tribute that card off or negate it ahead of time so that you don't have to answer for any more problems. However, there could be a follow-up with like a continue if they have stuff in the graveyard, or they have Pluton HG in hand, which could open up a play if they already search for a Caesar or a heavy Borger. Divine Incarnate is pretty good because the rock is likely going to activate at some point because it's a free advantage, and then whatever that they summon from that rock could activate and get them another card. And if they somehow remove one of your cards and Kurikara can eat all of them, just summon another monster and just try to attack for game. But that only works if they don't have Pluton HG. HG is just like their last line defense, battle fader almost. It can go up to 3k, but what really matters is that it can actually lead into a Caesar when you've broken their bard, so there's a little bit of a limitation. That's why I like throwing a Kaiju over, because if you throw a Kaiju over, they can't drop the Pluton HG, and that is important. And they also have a Graveyard Revival, you know, that's going to be Vanquish Soul continue. As for the negation based stuff, Droplet is pretty decent because they can't respond, so that itself is pretty good. But the reason why I don't like playing stuff like Dark Blue no more, because if they just have a bunch of monsters on the field, those cards are useless. They're just gonna tag and tag and tag, and once they tag and tag and tag, what's the point of using these cards anyway, because you would have just hard negged yourself. But for the Chalice and the Droplet, probably want to prevent them from activating their Rock of the Vanquisher, because the rock is there to really just set up plays, and then once they get their setup, it's really hard to play, because you're basically almost playing like a Tearlament-esque turn. They're playing on your turn. It's pretty rough. Then there's Mass Destruction. Aside from the Raisin and I guess Caesar, all their monsters can be destroyed, and it's actually really, really rough. If all their stuff gets nuked to oblivion, it's really bad for them because they need to maintain names on the field so they can tag out properly. Caesar might not actually be on the field on the very first turn. It's not the most typical card. Some people do put it up because they hard opened it, but if they didn't hard open it, it likely comes from a follow-up. And if you play Raigeki, they can't chain and tag in the Caesar, because if they chain and tag in the Caesar will die, because Caesar needs to activate to get the protection. So that's why these types of mass removal, they're not that bad. In fact, they're actually pretty good at just simplifying the game state, and that's kind of the whole point. You need to simplify the game state so they don't have the names sticking on the field. And then as for triple tactics, Thrust, I like Thrust because Thrust can actually go dig some of these cards out for you, and that's why it's preferred, because if they go for, they're gonna Heavy Borger, draw another card maybe because they want another hand trap against you. That's gonna enable you to play Thrust, and that makes life pretty difficult for your opponent, especially if you're gonna choose to go for like Dark Hole and like other mass removal just to simplify the game state. You know, that's the whole point. If you're gonna go for triple tactics talent, I'd like to see us try to use the taking effect, because it's non-target, so which means if they're trying to tag in a monster, they don't get that opportunity. It's kind of interesting because if they activate Rock of the Vanquisher to summon a monster, you can just take that monster and they can't tag it, and they can't choose to tag the rock, because to tag you need to add a card back to hand, and since you know the Rock of the Vanquisher can't get added back to hand, you don't get the summon. So there are certain limitations there, but these are the board breakers that I am considering. Kaiju is definitely one of my favorites. I tried evenly matched, but they usually just leave the Rock of the Vanquisher and then they just start playing on my turn anyway. But if they had additional stuff on the field and I have a main phase 2 immediate answer, then the Kaiju plus the evenly, they pretty much just chew up their entire field. And finally, we're into Floodgates. Okay, Floodgates, let's just get over this one quickly. There can be only one. This is a very bad card to play against them because they play it themselves. If you see a Vanquish Soul player, they don't do anything but they set a card, you can expect it's a Floodgates. There can be only one. Then there's also Skill Drain. Honestly, it's like decent, but it's not that effective. The answer to Skill Drain is literally activate Caesar, reveal 3, chain Borger. Borger summons out Caesar, removes the card. Borger now can actually draw a card later on. Skill Drain's kind of mediocre. Then there's also like Gozen Match. Gozen Match as if their first monster is Raisin, then you can probably activate Gozen Match. But if you activate Gozen Match and they chain and they tag into Caesar, then you're screwed either way. Because Gozen Match, one attribute, they can play with Earth attribute. They can play Cashier Fenrir. They can play Pantera. They have Caesar. They have everything to answer that Gozen Match, so they can definitely get out of it. Rivalry of Warlords. This is probably the best one because, like I said, they're mixed typing. They can't go into anything. They're stuck with the very first monster. As long as you don't align the columns, it's going to buy you a lot of time. It's going to be very difficult for them to even go into a single other monster unless they have, multiples of the same name. And that's definitely a lot harder. That's it. This is the general direction of how to beat Vanquish Souls. But regardless, thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, learned a thing or two, took a little shortcut, 10 minutes of your time, and boom, you already know everything you really need to know about Vanquish Souls, how to beat them. Well, hit that like button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, check out MST.TV, and I'll see you all in the next one.